Today I am making strip sets to put into some different quilt blocks, and I want to talk about things you can do to make sure your strip set is perfectly flat and even, and also when you might not want to use a strip set. So basically I'm using the width of fabric to make these strip sets that then I can divide into other units and piece together. So whether you cut all the individual squares first and sew, or sew a long strip and then piece things together, it's really like the same thing in reverse order. So it really doesn't make a difference. Some people think it speeds up the process a little bit. And you know, it's obviously easier to work with bigger pieces of fabric. So let's just see how it turns out. I've got my 2 long strips, and I am going to start at this selvage edge. The big white strip here on this red fabric is the selvage, and that's going to be important in just a second. So let's get this first set of fabric strips sewn together. And there we have our first unit. I want to press to the dark, so I'm going to go ahead and do that at the ironing board, and then I will be ready to add this nice pretty blue on the other end of my strip. So excuse me for just one moment. Okay, I've got that pressed. I'm ready to add another strip on this side. I'm making a patriotic quilt in red, white, and blue. And remember how I said I started on this selvage edge? Your strip sets can start going a little bit wonky if you always start from the same end. So I'm gonna turn this around, and then I can put this end of the strip through the needle first and get those seams starting from opposite ends, and that kind of keeps everything adjusted nicely, and it will lay straighter and flatter when you are done. Okay, and there we have a very pretty patriotic strip set. I need to press, and then we can trim. I've pressed everything to the darker fabric, so away from that white. And when I start trimming, I'm going to start at this end where the red fabric was a little bit shorter. I'm laying my ruler right along that seam so that everything stays nice and straight and square. And then I can bring that cut edge around and use it to line up my units. So I am making 2.5 inch strips, and we just keep a horizontal line on those seams and cut our strips, and then these will be ready for some fun 9-patch blocks. There are a couple different options you can use to make the cutting go a little faster, and I talk all about that in my DIY strip set video, so I will link that for you. Okay, there we are at the end of our strip. Let's see how many units we got out of that. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 2.5 inch strips out of my width of fabric set. So we're going to be able to make quite a few blocks, and that is the reason why I don't really want to use strip sets for this quilt. I like to make scrappy blocks, and all of my units now are going to be the same. So you can see I would much rather have 3 different blues and 2 different reds than to have the same fabrics here. It's okay. I can mix these in with my other 2.5-inch squares that I'm using for this project, but that is the biggest reason why I do not sew with strip sets, is because I want more variety in my blocks. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Here is my plan for the patriotic 9-patch blocks. I'm going to pair them with some snowball blocks and turn this into a donation quilt for Quilts of Valor. I can extend the layout by adding the rows of friendship stars and putting a nice border on it. If you just want to play with your scraps, make some 9-patch blocks and again add them to the snowball block, and you've got a nice quilt that has a lattice work effect. And I thought this was really interesting with a darker background for the snowball blocks. And I always use EQ8 to mock up my quilt layouts, and you can find a link for that design software in the video description below. While I may not use strip sets to piece all my quilts, I do love to work with jelly roll strips, and you can learn more in this video.